Thank you, Dennis Small, for your outstanding presentation. In fact, I should probably just yield the floor back to you because you were hitting everything perfectly. Um, we are, I've been accused a lot lately of being an alarmist. Some people will say, well, you're irresponsibly engendering fear. But I will say right now that if you are not scared to death, then you're the problem. I'm not the problem. If nuclear war and the prospects of nuclear war don't scare you, um, I don't know why you're here in this forum, and I don't know what you're trying to accomplish. There literally is no other issue today. No other issue today. I'm going to just emphasize that again because I know people out there feel strongly about very many other issues. There's no other issue today that's more important than preventing a nuclear war. And we almost had one last week. I don't know how, if people don't understand, Keir Starmer brought with him the documents, the target list. If Joe Biden had signed off on those documents, the target list, part of that target list would have been executed that night. British technicians are already in Ukraine loading target data onto the Storm Shadow missiles. These missiles right now are being used against targets in Novorossiya, in the former Ukrainian provinces of Lugansk, Kherson, Donetsk, and Zaporizhia. Um, why? Because Ukraine, and again, it's right to say they say this is our territory. Okay. Crimea, they say it's our territory. Okay. That's why Russia is not responding by threatening nuclear war when Storm Shadow missiles are used against those targets. This is a debatable point. Russian territory, however, outside of those five named areas, is Russian territory. It's sovereign territory, unquestionably sovereign territory. And any effort to use um, NATO provided weapons, and it's not just NATO provided weapons, it's NATO targeted weapons. As Dennis said, this isn't about just saying, okay, we'll fire a Storm Shadow off. What's the difference between that and any other weapon system Ukraine has? Ukraine has had very good success using long range drone systems and striking targets deep inside Russia. What's the difference between a Ukrainian drone system and a British or American provided missile? The Ukrainian drone system is a Ukrainian weapon system directed by the Ukrainian government, and Russia will hold the Ukrainian government to account using whatever means it chooses to do so. This is the nature of conflict between uh, two nations, and Russia and Ukraine are in a state of advanced conflict. Ukraine thinks of it as a war. Russia calls it a special military operation. That's a matter of semantics. They are in conflict with one another. NATO claims not to be a party to this conflict. And yet, when NATO provides weapon systems that can only strike targets when the targets have been processed by NATO only entities, that's what people need to understand here. It's not just a matter of programming a Storm Shadow missile. There is an element in Europe, part of NATO, that absorbs American intelligence information, overlays it with American mapping information, and turns it into the data necessary to strike a target. That data is loaded into the Storm Shadow. Because the Storm Shadow communicates with GPS, it doesn't do it on a commercial GPS signal. That's just that's just a single channel. It can be jammed. It does it using the military channels. That's two channels. They're encrypted. They're encrypted by the United States using American encryption technology that has to be loaded into the systems by Americans, not by Ukrainians. Ukrainians are not cleared to operate this level of cryptographic keying material. So when a Storm Shadow is fired against a target inside Russia, it is literally being targeted by NATO. NATO is approving of the target and facilitating the use of this weapon system against the target. That means that NATO is a literal party to the conflict. And yet Keir Starmer wanted Joe Biden to sign off on this, to say, allow us to use this American intelligence so that we can strike targets inside Ukraine using the Storm Shadow missile. This is an act of war. And it's something that, had Keir Starmer signed off on, would have been implemented that night. It's not something that's going to happen down the road. It would have happened that night, Friday the 13th. And on Saturday the 14th, we would all have been dead. That's the point I'm trying to make here, people. It's not a joke. It's not a game. The Russians are not bluffing. Vladimir Putin made this clear on Thursday when it became evident that the United States was having this meeting with Starmer in the White House. And he basically said that if you do this, you will be a party to the conflict and Russia will have to act accordingly. Dmitry Peskov, the spokesperson, reiterated this point. He said the president has made this quite clear, but not clear enough because they still had the meeting. On Friday, the UN ambassador, or the Russian ambassador to the United Nations, in front of the Security Council in session, reiterated this point that it will be a declaration of war if the United States and Great Britain enable Ukraine to use NATO-provided weapons to strike Russia. The Russian ambassador to the United States took it a step further. Anatoly Antonov said, if you think that a nuclear conflict will be limited to Europe, basically acknowledging that if this happens, Russia will use nuclear weapons against Europe. If you're an American and you think it will be limited to Europe, think again. We will strike you. You're playing with fire. Don't let your fingers get burned. Now, when he said this, it sent shockwaves through the American community. Former government officials, and if you know anything about how the establishment works, we have a whole host of former government officials who advise, who are in have connectivity with the current administration. They called Anatoly Antonov, and you have to ask yourself, why didn't the government call? Because we don't have connectivity with the Russians anymore. I was at the Russian embassy on Friday night. I was there at the invitation of Anatoly Antonov. I was there to attend a concert performance, a piano concert performance of Rimsky-Korsakov and other Russian composers, as part of Anatoly Antonov's effort to demonstrate to the American people the culture of Russia, to help detangle the Russophobia that has spun its web around the Americans. I've never seen the ambassador so distracted and so concerned. This was his big moment. He has been working for months to bring this concert in, to make this demonstration. And yet at this moment, his mind was elsewhere. And now I know where his mind was. He was uncertain whether or not he would live the day. He was uncertain what the United States would do. He had done his duty in articulating this, though, to the various former government administration who called the Biden administration and said, he's not bluffing. This is as real as it gets. If you sign this document, we will be at war with Russia, and the war will be a nuclear war. I don't know if you guys are hearing what I'm saying. We all almost died on Saturday. If you read Annie Jacobson's wonderful book, Nuclear War, A Scenario,